Hello, and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. This podcast is dedicated to the aspiring author or illustrator who really wants to be able to make it in the publishing industry these days. And there's a lot of various things that you have to overcome, and hopefully this podcast will give you some of those tools to help you actually accomplish that. Today we have a great guest. His name is Matthew Rotundo. He was a winner in Volume 25 in 2009 with his short story Gone Black. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, John. Thank you very much for having me.
Sure. It was, I think it was one of the earlier posts that I sent around to all the past winners, and you responded, "Hey, I'd like to do that." And so here we are.
Yeah, I never hesitate to blather about myself. So yeah, I was happy to join you.
That's great. So now, when you won in 25 on Volume 25, it was you said that was at least your 10th entry. So what was your runway from starting in 8 years of age with your Cheese and the Elephant story that filled a whole page up to where you actually won the contest?
Well, yeah, you're referring to my Elephant and the Cheese story,
Yes.
which was the first story that I ever wrote, and mentioned that on my bio on my website.
Yeah.
And I was, I think, about 8 or 9 years old when I wrote that, and it was shortly after that I kind of realized that writing was what I wanted to do with my life. Before that, I had the kind of usual kid dreams. I thought, I'd like to be a policeman or a fireman. And then as I got a little older, I thought, I think I'd like to be a scientist. But then as I got just a little bit older after that, I as much as I like science, I was like, I don't know that that's quite what I want to do. And then it just kind of hit me, and I was thinking about the story, The Elephant and the Cheese, when I'd written that. I thought, I just kind of flashed back on that and thought, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to be a writer. And it was something I was just absolutely certain of from that moment on. So that was the beginning. And of course, when I first got that idea in my head, I decided, I need to start writing stuff right away. And so I would start trying to write stories. My first instincts were always to try to write novels. And I don't know why I wouldn't kind of go easier with short stories, but I just started wanting to write novels. Of course, none of those ever panned out when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. But when I was at those ages, and in school, I might have an assignment to write a story, and boy, I loved those. I jumped at those. Had a great time writing those kinds of stories, and they were very well received in high school, and then even in college. I took creative writing classes in college, and I was at least one creative writing teacher that I had really liked my work and had me come back and have a talk to another class, like in another year, and he referred to me as one of his star pupils, which was very flattering.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then after that, after college, I would start, doing a bit of writing here and there, and I finally started getting really serious about it. And right about that time, so gosh, we'd be talking here, maybe early 90s or so, is when I first heard of the contest and thought it was an amazing opportunity. So I would enter in the contest, and I had, the honorable mentions and the quarterfinalist finishes, and not much more beyond that. And then for a time there, I was actually fortunate enough that I was able to start selling some stories. So I kind of started tapering off a little bit with Writers of the Future, because I knew that I was close to proing out. I actually thought at one time, I had proed out. So I stopped entering the contest. But then I was taking another look at it and looking at the eligibility rules and hearing about other writer friends of mine who had entered, and I was thinking, well, maybe I'm not entirely sure I'm right about this. So I actually wrote, I sent an email, I reached out to, it was Jody Labaki, I sent an email to, and I said, here's a list of everything that I've published. Am I still eligible? And Jody very nicely sent me back an email saying, yes, Matt, you are still eligible, just barely, but you're still eligible. So I started entering again. So, I kind of worked my way up the ladder a bit there. I was a quarter finalist or an honorable mention, and then I had a couple of semifinalist finishes, and then I had a finalist finish, which I was really excited about, but I ended up being a non-winning finalist. So I used to joke to everyone I knew. I was like, yeah, I've done everything except win that contest. And then finally in, I think it was March of 2008, I got a phone call from Joni, and she said, are you sitting down? And I said, yeah. And she told me I'd taken first place in my quarter. So that was kind of the way it worked. I was obviously very ecstatic. Thank goodness no one was in the house at the time, because boy, I made a lot of noise.
That was the story Gone Black, right?
That was for Gone Black, yes. Which was a story that originally would not have been eligible. My original draft of that story was a little too long.
Uh-huh.
And I got a very insightful critique from a friend of mine. And he said, this is good, but this opening is taking too long, and there's a lot of dead time here. And I looked at it and I said, boy, he's right. And I cut it pretty severely, and I cut almost like 1,000 words out of that story, and that's what got it under the upper word limit for the contest. And so that's when I was able to submit it.
Well, that's
so
great.
I was very grateful for that critique, and very happy, obviously, with the results.
That was the point then when you came out to Hollywood, and then you had your week-long workshop, and
yeah,
you had who was the instructor? Was that Kathy Wentworth and
Yeah, Kathy Wentworth and Tim Powers were the instructors. Kathy was still with us. She was fantastic. Tim was terrific as well. And it was a really great group of people, in that class with me. And I'm still in touch with many of them. During the week-long workshop there, you're partnered with a writing buddy. And my writing buddy was Gray Linnea. And Gray was just a font of inspiration and fun and challenges. And so, we were gearing up at that time to be, writing our 24-hour story. And Gray would just hit me with random writing prompts and say, okay, you see that? That needs to be in your story. And I said, okay. And then, so we were taking a walk. At one time we were walking down Hollywood Boulevard there along the Walk of Fame, and he spotted a name on the Walk of Fame, and he said, that guy needs to be in your story. I'm like, okay. and doing all kinds of things like that. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So
but the workshop itself was fantastic.
So are you still in touch with Gray?
Pardon me? Yeah. I don't see Gray very often, but but most times when I'll see Gray, we'll be at conventions, and we'll always, even though we haven't, might not have talked to each other in years, we'll still come up and hug each other and all that, and say hi. Gray's terrific. Yeah,
I've been in touch with Emery Huang. He was the grand prize winner that year. He's in, I think he's in China. He wants to get back into writing. He's mostly gone off into working in selling gold. So he's.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Last I knew for Emery, and Emery was terrific too. Like I said, everybody was. I knew Emery was there was a family restaurant that he was involved in New York.
I went to see him there. Yeah, I went to see him there, and his whole and he treated us all the stuff. One of the years at a couple years actually at Book Expo. Then he went to Taiwan, and he's been there. But it's anyway. Yeah, so I've still been in touch with him, and he a few months ago he said, "Yeah, I want to get back into writing," but he was still trying to his logo that he uses on his Facebook page is these gold chips. I said, okay, good, you're still working on that. But he's there in Taiwan working away at it.
Well, I hope he does get back into writing, because he is terrific, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah. So on the contest itself and the workshop, any particular part that for you was the most memorable or valuable takeaway?
Well, definitely, I'd have to say the 24-hour story. I know a lot of people who have been, who follow the contest and who might be trying to win it might be a bit apprehensive about the whole concept of writing a story in 24 hours.
Yeah.
I was a little apprehensive myself, but I'll tell you, it came together so nicely for me that it was kind of inspiring. I know that, you're given three basic prompts there. You're given, Kathy Wentworth had given everybody a random object.
Yeah.
And so these were just random objects she had from her house. And so she gave me a random object, and then we had to go to the library to research a topic of our choice, and then we had to interview a random stranger on Hollywood Boulevard. So some of those things are a bit intimidating to somebody who might be a bit introverted or feeling a bit awkward about it. But I'll tell you something. It was really the library. When we went to the library, that's where I got my idea for the story that I ended up writing.
Yeah.
I walked into the library, and it wasn't actually anything that I found in the library. It was actually the walls outside the library. We walked over to this library, and somebody had pointed out that there's these spikes on the top of the walls surrounding the library. And I was like, "Why? Hollywood's a rougher town than I thought it was." And I just kind of got this idea for Hollywood after the apocalypse, after some sort of collapse of civilization, and what Hollywood would be like at that time. And I thought, oh my God, there's a story there.
Yeah.
And so that ended up being the story that I wrote for the 24-hour story, and it was a piece called "The Hills," and I ended up writing that story and finishing it actually in plenty of time. I think I was finished with a first draft of that story before noon the next day. It just kind of came together so nicely for me. And sometimes you get lucky that way. Sometimes it just works out like that. So I finished the story and just felt very good about it. But I wasn't sure if the story itself was any good. I was proud of it, but I didn't know if it was really worthwhile yet until I went ahead and finally sold it. Not too long ago, actually. About 2 years ago, I sold it to an anthology put out by Tanstoffel Press called Enter the Aftermath. And it was a story, again, called The Hills, which I was very proud of. And I actually liked that story so much that I expanded it into a novel. Now, that novel still needs another rewrite, but I expanded it into a novel called Apocalypse Pictures Presents. So I have hope.
That's a great title.
You like that? Yeah,
I do. I do.
So
after you told me about the story, what led up the story and what it sparked it, like, wow, that totally fits. That's a great title.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope the novel lives up to it. But I was able to sell the short story, which is now chapter 2 of that novel. So I guess that's proof of concept, and we'll just hope for the best on the novel.
Yeah, well, that's interestingly enough, the story that Pat Rothfuss won with was one of the chapters of his novel, which then became a major international bestseller with his series. But it was
Name of the Wind, which is a great book. Yeah,
yeah, but it was a chapter out of that was his winning story.
Mm-hmm. So that is also very hopeful for me. So I can only hope to have any kind of success like Pat has had.
Yeah, absolutely. So since when you've written a few novels, you got is it called the Prison World Revolt series? Yeah,
that's I've published 2 novels in the Prison World Revolt series. They're called Petra and Petra Released, and I am currently working on book 3 in that series, which is called Petra Rising. I am very, very late with that book. It's going very slowly, but people who are interested in following me, you might, if you end up subscribing to my newsletter, I hope to have an announcement on that sometime kind of soon.
Oh, great.
I won't go into any more I won't go into any more detail than that for fear of overselling it. But I put out Petra, and Petra released kind of back to back because those books had already been written, and then I thought I'd have some run-up time to get Petra Rising done, but it's taken a lot longer than I had hoped. But, Pat Rothfuss can tell that same story, too.
Exactly. Yeah, because Petra's a prison planet, right?
Yes, Petra's the name of my prison world. And the story involves an escape attempt from this prison world. It's kind of a brutal and unhappy place, as you might suspect.
Yeah.
But a group of people have decided they're going to stage a prison break. And my protagonist is a guy by the name of Kane Python. And Kane comes from another world, and he's come to Petra on kind of a fact-finding mission. And he ends up getting caught up in this escape attempt, all too unwittingly, and laughs ensue. I'm kidding, it's not that funny. But it is, it's an action-adventure story, and I tell you, it's a place that it's a hard place to live in, and nobody would ever really want to visit there, but it has this kind of a special place in my heart among the fictional worlds that I've created. I really like Petra. I've got, the first two books in the series out. The next book that comes out will kind of complete a story arc. But if there is sufficient interest, I'd be happy to go back to Petra and tell more stories, because I think there might be a bunch more Petra stories in there somewhere.
Sure. Well, best of luck to you on that one there.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. So now on, you say that you write science fiction, fantasy, and horror, but you gravitate more towards science. Is Petra, is that like more science fiction, or is it more horror?
It's Petra is a pretty genuinely science fiction action adventure story, and a lot of the novels that I've written have been science fiction. I have written also, this is just another one that's kind of still sitting in the proverbial trunk, trying to sell. But it's an urban fantasy / horror story, which is also an expansion of a short story that I had published in Intergalactic Medicine Show several years ago called Wet Work. But most of my novels have been science fiction novels, including the ones that I don't market anymore to anyone, just because I'm kind of embarrassed by them. They're not quite up to snuff. But obviously Petra and Petra Released are science fiction stories. The other one I mentioned, Apocalypse Pictures Presents, is a science fiction story. And so I have probably a lot more fantasy and horror stuff among my short work.
Right. Okay, I'm tracking with that. So what is the process like? How do you start, change, and actually complete a novel? What's your process?
Well, I'm pretty much of a pantser. There are writers who are outliners, and there are writers who kind of write by what they call the seat of the pants, and they call themselves pantsers, and that's pretty much what I am. I don't like outlining at all. I have nothing against those who do like to outline. It's just that's not my process. It doesn't really work well for me. I don't believe in writing the story before I write the story. So I tend to just kind of make it up as I go. Now, that's not to say I have no idea where the story's going. Right. I have some idea. Typically what I'm going to do when I'm working on a novel, I get the idea for the novel, and then I start writing notes, kind of contextual preparation. These notes aren't necessarily about story events, so you can't really call them an outline. But mostly what they are their notes about the characters, who these people are, and what's the world like that they live in.
Right.
So like if I was writing Petra, I'd be writing down a bit about Kane, my protagonist, and what kind of a person is he? and what is it he was looking for? What is it he wants? And, what kind of problems does he have? What kind of conflicts is he up against, internally and externally? What's he trying to do? And then writing notes about Petra, the prison world itself. What does this place look like? What is it like? It's an Earth-like planet. It's a bit larger than Earth would be, but it's an Earth-like planet. I kind of had an idea for it being a resource-poor world, which never made it because it was resource poor, it wasn't a good candidate for colonization by a spacefaring civilization. They found it and they didn't see much worth colonizing there because it's resource poor. And I had to ask myself, okay, if it's resource poor, why is it resource poor? And then I kind of came up with some ideas about, okay, well, it's a very old world and it's tectonically dead. So, no new mountains are being slowly formed by, tectonic plate subduction. The mountains are actually all kind of gradually eroding away because they're not getting any taller.
Right.
There's no volcanism on this world, and there's no earthquakes, and all of the resources that might be brought up by any kind of volcanism or stuff like that just doesn't happen. And so so I'd just be asking myself a lot of questions like that. How does this work? How does this work? And why is this world like this? How does this prison work? How do you have a prison planet? How does that get set up?
Right.
And I'd be asking and just writing down all the answers to these questions, how this works. Now, who's in charge of this prison planet? What's the warden of a prison world like? He was actually kind of the catalyst for the whole story. I was kind of fascinated by the whole concept of a warden of a prison planet, and how much power somebody like that would have. And I'm always kind of drawn to themes of power and those who have it and what they do with it. And so that was a kind of a fascinating thought for me. So, I'd be writing a bunch of notes about this warden of this prison world. What's he like? So I take a lot of notes, and not much of those notes are about actual story events or about plot. It's mostly just kind of background information that I'm going to need to know in order to tell the story. Now, once I feel like I have a good enough handle on the characters and who they are and what they want, and, I have an idea for kind of, where the story starts, what's kind of the inciting event that kicks off the story, that's when I feel like I'm ready to sit down and start writing, when I'm ready to sit down and start drafting. Right. So I will do that, and I might have a pretty decent idea about maybe what the first act of the story is going to be like. Yeah. The second act of the story might be fairly murky, and then the third act could be a total mystery to me, or I might have like some idea. And Petra was a great example of that. Actually, I was in the middle of drafting Petra, and I was coming toward the end of the first act of it, and I realized that the ending that I kind of had in mind just wasn't going to work at all. I was like, there's no way that works. That's just not right. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? Here I am a good third of the way into this story, and I've just scubbled my ending. How is it supposed to end? So I had to kind of think about it, and then I finally, as I'm moving on to it, I got this idea for the ending, and I thought, oh, wow, I can't do that to my main character. I can't do that to this guy. That would be a terrible thing to do to him. And I thought, no, actually, I can do that. Yeah, I can. As a matter of fact, I must. I got to do this. So that ended up being the ending to the story that I finally found it. It wasn't what I originally conceived, but that's and I've had several people tell me when they've read it that ending was a real surprise to them. I was like, well, it was a total surprise to me too. So there you go. Yeah, it was. I've not read it yet, but I've read the story description and some of the other comments about it, and it was like. Mm-hmm. It sounds fascinating, and I was very happy to see number 2 right away, so that I was able to move into that, and then based on how you're creating this whole the master arc,
I can see that, when you get to number 3, that it would resolve the whole thing. And the way you've been describing this a bit, yeah.
That's the idea, and it's I've never had to do this before, where I've you got the third book in a 3-book series, and I'm right now, as I'm working on this first draft, I am pretty close to the end of it, and making sure that I wrap up all of these loose ends is a little daunting, and it's kind of hard to keep track of it after been into it for 3 books. I've got a number of characters and a number of different things I've got to keep track of, and then I've got to worry about continuity errors and things like that. So it's a bit tricky.
Yeah, but hopefully you got a few readers that, like the guy that helped you on your first winning story, that that to trim down your opening on Gone Black, that
Sure.
Will help and give you some of that direction and point out some of those things so that you don't have any problem with continuity.
Yeah, I do have a couple of people that I have counted on in the past, and who have offered, say, hey, yeah, when you're ready with book 3, let me know.
Have you done anything with the forum? Have you been involved at all with the Writers of the Future forum?
I have poked around at the forum a few times. I don't know that I've actually ever posted anything there, but I have been out there on a couple of occasions. Just kind of poking, and it's been a while, although I did take another look at it actually just today, because I was like, oh man, I haven't been out to these forums in so long.
It's grown quite a bit, and there's a lot of people willing to help fellow writers in there.
Absolutely. So yeah, I noticed that when I went out there. I was like, oh, this is quite interesting. So
yeah.
It's definitely a thing for people to keep in mind. Those forums, they look terrific. There's a lot of activity there, and like you said, a lot of people willing to help others.
Exactly. Now, you've got I guess it's your website and your newsletter, Pixel Town. Mm-hmm. So how did that come to be, and then what do you see as the value of that for you as an author?
Well, yeah, Pixel Town is just is the name of my website, MatthewSRotundo.com. And the whole idea of Pixel Town actually comes from a short story I had written and published many years ago. It was actually even before the contest, and the story was called "Hitting the Skids in Pixel Town." And it's another one of my Hollywood stories, like The Hills was one of my Hollywood stories. I have a few of these. I'm a bit of a movie buff, and so I like to tell Hollywood stories and stuff like that. So Hitting the Skids in Pixel Town was another science fiction story, kind of set in a near future Hollywood in which, and this was written several years ago, like over a decade ago. But it's a Hollywood in which everything is digitized, and actors aren't really acting anymore. They just get scanned in, and somebody animates them, so that's where the whole idea for Pixel Town came from. And I had a story about this Hollywood actress who had become a big star in Pixel Town, and wasn't maybe noticed for her acting ability, because she was just scanned in and other people were manipulating the image and doing all of that. But she became a big star. But now she's hitting the skids, as the title mentions, and then she ends up kind of falling in with some people who are making movies kind of the old-fashioned way, and where she has to actually rely on her own acting abilities and things like that, stuff she hasn't had to do in years. And so that was a kind of a favorite story of mine, and it got published in an anthology many years ago. And I thought that'd be kind of a fun conceit to use for my own website. So I just kind of created this whole idea of Pixel Town, and it's my online home. And so, everything is kind of based on that whole idea of a city. And so I talk about, the tourist attractions in Pixel Town, which would be my work. And then, I've got my own, the Pixel Town Dispatch is my newsletter, which people can sign up for. And the whole idea is just to have a home base online for anyone who is interested in finding out more about me. If they've heard my name somewhere and they want to know more about me or my work, Pixeltown is where you need to go. And so that's just kind of the whole purpose behind it. And I try to keep that, updated with any new stuff of mine that's coming out, or any of convention appearances that I might be doing, and all of that. So that's kind of the whole idea behind Pixeltown.
Now, do you find that is that the major way that you use to promote yourself and introduce yourself to new potential readers? Is that
absolutely? Yeah, absolutely. That's I think the best way to go. I don't know of a better way to do it. I mean, I do have a bit of a social media profile. I've got my Facebook page, which people can find. It's just under my name, Matthew S. Rotundo. But I don't use that just as a way to promote my writing. That's just kind of, I might post anything that I think is kind of funny or interesting there. But the main thing that for promoting my writing is the website, and is Matthew S. Rotundo's Pixeltown. And yeah, I think that just makes the most sense. Social media platforms come and go, and nobody does MySpace anymore. There's people who say Facebook is dead. I don't necessarily know if that's true or not, but
it's still well over a billion.
Yeah, there's still plenty of people out there, but again, social media platforms come and go. There's Snapchat and Instagram and all of these others, Twitter and all of these others, and a lot of these I'm not on, but I just don't have time really to keep up with all of them.
Sure.
But they wax and wane in popularity and relevance, but your website's going to endure. Your website is going to be yours, and you can update it as needed. If it's looking a little dated, well, you can fix that. You can control that, and it's the one thing you can control. You can't control how popular Facebook or other social media profiles are. You can control what you do with your website, and so that's what I would recommend. Even if you're doing a lot of social media stuff, you got to have that foundation, and so that's why I think the website serves as that.
I mean, that's absolutely correct, and that's what we do with the contest. We have a lot of work that I do with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and with YouTube, but it all directs to a website. That's the top of your funnel is your social media, but where the actual meat is for yourself is that website and your newsletter, which you can then constantly continue to keep people informed of what's happening with you. Because if you're on your website, they can sign up for it to find out more about you. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way I approach it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that every now and then you see people at conventions. What's your convention drill like?
Well, I will do what I can to get on programming if I can. I like being on panels. Like I said at the beginning, I like to blather, so I do like to try to get on panels whenever I can. No, there's a few local cons that I've attended. I've even been a guest of honor at a local con. And there's one in Lincoln, Nebraska that I try to go to every year, called Constellation. And I have a good relationship with those people who run that convention.
Sure.
I've talked to, I've been working with them for years, and I always write to them, well in advance of the convention, and say, hey, I'm interested in being on program. Here's maybe a couple ideas for some panels if you're interested. And they're always happy to accommodate me. Now, when you start talking about larger regional conventions, like there's one in Denver, Colorado called Mile High Con, which is a pretty long-running, well-respected, well-established convention.
Yeah,
I love the people who run that. It's been terrific, and I have been very sad that those of your listeners who may have been at Mile High Con recently. I haven't been there the last couple of years. I haven't been able to. I've always had some kind of schedule conflict that's come up. So it's kind of killing me that I haven't been able to go back to Mile High Con, but I really want to go back again as soon as I can. So I have a good relationship with those folks there. And then I'll also try, with the bigger national cons like World Cons or the NASFIC, when WorldCon is not on the continent, and WorldCon's like in New Zealand, like it is this year. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it to New Zealand, but I think I can make it to Columbus, which is where the NASFIC is this year. So I will, I'll reach out again, and they try to be respectful of the people who run these conventions. They need a lot of lead time to prepare stuff, and it's all volunteer run, and so I understand that. So I just kind of reach out at you. Don't be pushy, you be polite, you be professional, and you try to get on you try to get on panels, and sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't.
Sure.
And if whatever reason they don't have room for you, well, it doesn't mean you can't go. It doesn't mean you can't have a good time. You certainly can. And you just kind of make the best of it. But, I'll try to get on the panels. I will, work to be kind of visible at conventions. I'll make sure that I post my programming schedule, such as it is, whatever it is might be, where people can find me. If they're interested in finding me, I'll post that before the con and during the con. And I will be visible at a lot of the like the parties and and a lot of the functions. And just really, the biggest advice I would have about going to a convention is just have fun.
Yeah.
If you're a writer, and you're trying to make a name for yourself, you can do that. But if all you're doing every minute of the con is trying to push your books or push your fiction or promote yourself, that gets old pretty quick, and people get tired of talking to you, and they'll start avoiding you. So, go and have fun and just participate. You're there because you're not just a writer of science fiction, you're a fan of it. So participate, be part of it, and enjoy it. And I think people respond to that more than they do any kind of hard sell.
That makes good sense. So any other particular advice that you would have then for someone as to entering the contest and the value or the significance of the Writers of the Future contest as a either as a launching pad or even as a waypost towards your growth as an author?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the number one piece of advice I give to any aspiring writer, and they've heard it a million times, I don't care, it doesn't make it any less true, never, never, never give up. I was good friends with Jay Lake, the author, before he passed, and he used to blog a lot about what is called psychotic persistence. Just persisting beyond all reason. You keep with it, even if it no longer makes any sense for you to do so. It makes no financial sense. It doesn't make sense on the time that you're putting into it. You might not see any kind of return on it. It doesn't matter. You persist anyway. And that same holds true for the contest. People have said it before, and I will repeat the information because, again, it's true. Keep entering the contest until you either win it or are no longer eligible, because both of those are good things. And if you continue to write, you can, you submit a story to the contest, and maybe it doesn't go very far. Okay, you might be a bit bummed out about that. It's okay to feel bummed out about that, but don't let that stop you. Write another story. Submit another story.
Exactly.
Keep writing. Do the next, because the next story is going to be better. It's a continual process, and you're going to get better at it the more that you do it, and that's going to start paying dividends. It might take a long time, or some people are very fortunate. Some people might win on their first entry. Some people, like me, you have to work their way up the chain. Some people have to submit dozens of times, like Kevin J. Anderson. I don't know how many times he submitted. So keep going. Keep trying again until you either win it or you're no longer eligible because you become a professional author. Again, both of those are positive things and well worth striving for. And the contest itself is a great bit of exposure for you. It's unlikely that I'll ever have, for myself in my professional life, a book signing like I had after the award ceremony, where I am signing books for hours on end. I'll probably never have that again.
Yeah.
And the award ceremony itself was so wonderful and all that. So, it's and getting that kind of exposure, I can't even express to you how valuable that is.
You did tell me that one story about your 25th reunion. That was a great story. Can you share that?
Oh well, yeah. That was hilarious because my winning of the contest kind of came just a little bit before my 25-year high school reunion, and so after I'd won the contest, gone to Hollywood, got the award and all that, my local newspaper wrote a story about it. So they did this nice little profile of me in my local paper, which I thought was great. Had my picture in there from the award ceremony and everything. And I thought that was just terrific. Well, and then that led to somebody from my high school's alumni association. They saw that story, and they contacted the reporter who wrote it, and the reporter who wrote it contacted me and said, hey, this person wants to talk to you. So then I got put in touch with this alumni person, and then they did a profile of me for my alumni newsletter. And again, this was just before my 25-year reunion. So I go to my 25-year reunion, and as I walk in the door, there's a group of people just as I walk in the door, and I recognize them. I haven't seen them in a couple of decades, but they all recognize me, and they break into applause when I walked in the door.
Wow!
Now that's the way to go to your reunion.
Absolutely, that's way cool. That's a great story.
That was awesome.
All right, so. I guess on wrapping this up, because I'm very interested to make sure that people find out about you and your stories. So how do people find you?
People can find me at my website, which is MatthewSRotundo.com. It's MattheWS, got to have the middle initial, S as in Sam, Rotundo, Rotundo, all run together, all one word, .com. And if you can't remember that, if you can at least remember my name, fairly unusual name, so it's kind of its own search engine optimization. Usually that my website will be among the first results that you get. So you go out there and you can find out all about what my current works are that are coming out.
You have a newsletter you can sign up for too, right?
And I do have a newsletter that you can sign up for at the website. So again, I'm hoping to have an announcement that I can make on my newsletter sometime kind of soon. So if you sign up for it, you'll be among the first to see that announcement whenever it might be coming. So I'm just teasing that a little bit, but I'm not making any promises as to when that announcement's going to come. But yeah, you can from my website sign up for the newsletter. You can also see if I've got any convention appearances. I haven't quite worked out my convention schedule yet for this year, but when I do have it worked out, that's going to be up on the website too, and you can see that. And again, my newsletter will update you on that sort of stuff as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Matt. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you after all these years, but I got totally excited after looking you up then after you commented on response to the Sending Around the podcast. So I'm very glad that we had a chance to chat here.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you. I haven't seen you since the award ceremony and all of that, but it's been great reconnecting with you, and I'm very glad to have been able to do this with you.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to the Rise to Future podcast. Just so you know, it's available on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Player FM, iHeart, and Spotify. So we have an episode we post every week, and it is very exciting to be able to share these successes and hopefully encourage you to make that next step up as a writer. So again, thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.